Good morning, everybody. So you saw in the program insert that David Spangler was mentioned as a co-director, former co-director of the Findhorn Foundation. Do you all know what the Findhorn Foundation is?
No.
No. Thank you, William. Okay. Findhorn community began in 1962 when a family and a friend lost their jobs at a local hotel, and this is in northeastern Scotland, and they moved to a sandy, windswept caravan park. And they soon found that feeding 6 people on unemployment benefits was difficult, so they decided to grow vegetables. The mother had a very disciplined meditation practice and received guidance, and their friend was mediumistic and contacted the plant diva and received guidance from them for their fledgling garden. They translated their guidance into action, and in this barren, sandy soil, they grew huge vegetables, herbs, and flowers, and most famously, the now legendary, and imagine this, everybody, 40-pound cabbage. Word spread, and the horticultural experts came from all over the world and were stunned and could not explain this. And the garden at Findhorn became famous. And the founder's unorthodox approach, rooted in co-creation between man and nature, formed the core philosophy of what became the Findhorn Foundation. I mention this because Clark and I were quite interested in this and visited Findhorn in the late 80s. And then again in the late 90s, and Vanessa, we took you there, and Dad. It was quite the experience. And in fact, my very first lecture for the foundation was on Findhorn, Sacred Kinship with the Plant Kingdom. Today, however, having completed last month the 7-module Zoom class on Sacred Kinship with the Animal Kingdom, basically on animal communication, I would like to share some nuggets of things that I learned and some of my personal experiences. This was taught by apparently the animal communicator of the United Kingdom. Approximately 388 people from all over the world participated, and obviously the teacher is a very fine channel with animals in bodies and those in spirit. And to give you an example of one of her many skills, dog owners frantically contacted her about their missing dog. This is in southwest England. She contacted the dog and gave the owner the location and told them he was in a briar patch. They said, no, not possible. They'd already searched there. Yes, the dog's there. He's down in a hole. I've seen his bloody paws and he can't climb out. The teacher told the dog to start barking and keep it up until the owners found him. He did, they did, and with the backup of the fire department, they had a children's stretcher, narrow children's stretcher, and they were able to put it down the hole. The dog climbed onto the stretcher and was brought up to safety. So this is the kind of experience we had. Just to give you an idea of the breadth and depth of the class, she covered seeing through their eyes, deepening your connection with animals, unconditional love and animal sovereignty, learning how to relate with greater respect, exploring the ethical dimensions of human-animal relationships, including power, consent, and agency across domestic, farmed, captive, and wild contexts, honoring animal lives and transitions, understanding how other species grieve so you can hold space with compassion, from grief to action, being able to support yourself, other animals, and the planet, and finally, vision, guidance, and co-creation, living in partnership with the animal kingdom. So here I'll share some nuggets. Sacred kinship is a way of relating to animals, to all living beings, that recognizes a deep inherent connection and mutual respect. It's sacred because it honors life as meaningful and whole, not useful or entertaining. It's kinship because it frames animals as part of our extended community of life rather than objects or property. Animal communication can be a quiet remembering, a gentle but powerful return to our true nature. It offers a way to restore harmony, reverence, and reciprocity between species. The principles for the entire course were simple. Curiosity over certainty. Notice what you experience without needing to judge it or label it. Openness over control. This is about invitation, not entitlement. And presence over technique. Another nugget. We are participants in a shared web of life, ethically called to honor, respect, and connect with other conscious beings. Animals are sentient beings with their own emotions, perspectives, and free will. And we do not recognize them as an it. We recognize their individuality. In every communication with an animal, we're coming from a place of presence, not extraction. It's more like we're here to have an exchange, not take. Once we begin to see animals as conscious beings with their own awareness and preferences, something naturally follows: right relationship. So how do we communicate in a way that honors them? What I'm about to say was very, very new for me. Consent and respecting boundaries. We always seek permission before initiating communication. We notice the animal's response, willingness, hesitation, or disengagement. And then sharing this with my horseshoer, a young woman in her 30s, she said to me, "Oh, I always ask for permission before I start working on a horse." And I thought, wow, I missed that memo. So for an example, for me, before I started this class, I would put fly masks on our new horses, and they're large masks that cover the ears and the nose and the whole thing, and they fought me. And their heads would get higher and higher, and it was a big struggle. It got a little bit better, but then once I got into the class and began asking permission and explaining what I was doing, it got easier. So one day I put Cody's mask on easily, and I had Curly's in my hand, and I turned to put it on him, and he moved away from me. And I said, "Oh, Curly, you don't want your fly mask on." And he moved farther away. And the old version of Sarah would have muscled that mask on him, knowing it was for his good. The new version said, "Okay, buddy, you're on your own with the flies today." I hung up the mask, sent them out to the pasture. And that was the last time that happened. And now if I give them a moment when they see the mask, they both lower their heads to make it easier for me. So in mentioning this idea about permission to friends and clients, I heard some great confirming stories. And this is how I perceive asking permission. I'm explaining what I'm going to do, and then I'll throw in a okay. And if they don't bolt out the door, then I think, okay. So I have a friend who was told by her vet to brush her cat's teeth once a day. And this has been going on for the last year, and it's been a nightmare. The cat hides at a certain time of the day. She has to come up behind it and grab it, and it's just a mess. So she was telling me about this and asked me, and I explained to her about your presence and permission. So one day, at a different time of the day, her cat was on her lap, and she explained everything, and she had the toothbrushing paraphernalia right there. And all of a sudden, she just started brushing the cat's teeth, and the cat was fine. The next day, she went back to her old time. The cat got up on her lap, and she brushed her teeth, and that was fine. The third day, she was brushing her cat's teeth, and the cat, she stopped, she was finished, and the cat started batting her, saying, "I want more." And that's when my phone blew up. She was so excited. Then another friend who grew up in the Carolines, in Hillsborough, before they were developed. She was a young girl, and her parents had 2 Dalmatians, and there was a gentleman up there who set out bear traps. And I don't know why, but that was going on almost 80 years ago. And one of their Dalmatians got caught in the trap, and the vet back then did as best he could and did some surgery, and he said to the mom, "You know, I don't think this is going to hold. I think I better put him down." His name was Duke. And the mom said, no, let me have him. I'll take him home and work with him. So here again, she sat down and explained everything to Duke and what she was doing, and apparently it was extremely painful doctoring. And it reminded me of when I was a little child, my parents would work with me, and my dad would give me his hand to squeeze when something was going to be very painful, and I just squeezed it as hard as I could. Well, she started working with the dog, and it had to do with some kind of a salve or something, and this Dalmatian put his mouth over her wrist and clamped down when it was getting so painful. And all she felt was pressure. He never once broke the skin. He just applied pressure just to hold on while she could do it. And the upshot was he healed. So the key takeaway in all of this is mutual respect, listening without agenda, honoring boundaries, and acting in the animal's highest interest. And this could apply human-to-human communication too. So we're getting close. So one of the modules, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, focused on Nikola Tesla, who said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Everything is made up of energy vibrating at different frequencies that can be measured in our own bodies and the bodies of animals. And we are accessing the animals' frequencies by using our intention. So Laura is going to show us David Hawkins' map of consciousness, because we do know emotions have frequencies. Here we go. So perfect. We're getting there. That's part of it. Yep. Perfect. Okay. So animal communication, or any communication, is about your state of being. Your calm, grounded presence allows clear communication. The lowest frequencies, you've got shame, anger, guilt, grief, distracted monkey mind. Communication is very difficult if this is your state of mind. I know our therapists know this for sure. Yeah. But communication gets clearer as your energy changes. And what we were encouraged to always be when we wanted to communicate with animals was to start with love and joy, and then these are contracted, and it's very difficult, and these are expansive, and it's much clearer when it's up there. So remember, in telepathic communication, animals are not responding to your words. They're responding to your state of being. Your thoughts and emotions create a signal that animals perceive instantly. And interestingly enough, at the end of the class, and Clark kind of took this with me week by week, our signals changed. And the teacher had said at the end of the class, it will be transformative and you will be a different person. And it's true, we have had very interesting interactions with animals now with a different signal that we are emitting. And case in point, this morning at 5:45, I was walking to the stable with Bogey to feed the horses, and there was a small animal over by Curly's gate. And I couldn't discern what it was. And as I got closer, first I thought maybe it was a squirrel and it was injured because it wasn't moving. And then when I got closer, I realized it was a possum. And I've never seen a possum in my life, much less at the ranch. And I asked Clark later, and he has never seen a possum either. So I put Bogey into the stable, and I stepped out again, and here was this possum still standing there. And I realized he was there waiting for me to communicate with me. And so I said good morning to him, and for about 5 or 6 seconds, he was there just sending me it was almost like affirming, you go girl today. I mean, part of the animal kingdom, signaling me. And then he turned around and scampered off, and I went inside to feed, and first Curly, and then I got to Cody's stalls, and I'm feeding Cody, and here comes the possum scampering by, and we both turn and look at him, and then Cody goes to me, oh, I know this guy, he's around a lot. So please don't ever underestimate how the animal kingdom wants to communicate with you. And the best communication, well, it's off now, but anyway, love, joy. But now we're getting to the next one. That's fine. Okay, so key takeaway, if we're reaching out to communicate from a calm, open, loving presence, images and thoughts and feelings come through more easily. And your emotional state is part of the communication, the conversation. You're entering into a shared field of awareness. Animals respond to the quality of your presence, not the effort of your mind. So the teacher led us through each week some mind-altering experiences to embrace the communication, and she'd always ask us to have animals come to us. And as you know, I like to send out pictures from our trail cameras at the ranch. And several months ago, I sent out one of a mountain lion, and I made the comment to you all in the email that they always seem to have their mouth open, like they're ready to eat. And it's kind of ugly. And frankly, I'm afraid of mountain lions. And I've heard stories how they hang in tree limbs and branches, and then will drop down on deer and drop down on horses. So, and then also during that time, Clark and I were chatting on how they're probably taking care of our deer population. So I think during one of these exercises, and I think it was in class 3, when we were inviting animals to come and give us messages, I was shocked because a mountain lion came to me, and to its right was a sign, and the sign said, "I come in peace." And I thought, whoa. I was just shocked because I hadn't been thinking about mountain lions for a long time. And then the next sign came and it said, "I eat to live." And I thought, whoa. So my awareness of mountain lions shifted just a tiny little bit then. So while many worked with different species and different animals and different pets, in this class, and the main reason I was taking it was I wanted to communicate with my horse, Cody. Here he is. He's a young, athletic, well-muscled Azteca. And right off the bat, when we got him, he moved very slowly. And initially I thought, okay, he's careful. You know, that's good. But then as time went on, it developed into a stubbornness of, I'm not moving. And privately, I didn't even say this to Clark, I thought, what have I gotten myself into now? So after kicking him and smacking him with the reins on his rump, that didn't do any good, so I got a crop, tried a crop. And that just irritated him. And he has a way of moving his head to say, I'm irritated. So I thought, okay. Then I thought, I'm going to get spurs. So we had a bucket of spurs up in the tack room, and I found some that fit, and I tried spurs. And that further irritated him. And then one day we're on Wall Road, and he was doing something goofy, and I did both, the crop and the gigged him with the spurs. And he let out a low, guttural growl. I have never heard a horse growl before, but I got the message and went immediately back up to the stable and put everything away, and I've never used them since. But by now the class was going on, and he would still pull this on me. He'd be stopping on the road, and here's Clark and Curly 3 city blocks ahead of me in the next county, and I'm wondering what's going on. And I'm asking, and I'm trying to listen and hear, and I'm not getting anything. And you may say, well, was he in pain? You know, is that a possibility? And no, because after every time I unsaddled him, he'd take off in a gallop, and then he'd buck out at me like, and then start tooting all the way up the hill. So I knew he was healthy. So one Sunday afternoon after church, I saddled him up, got on him, and he began to stretch his head in this very strange way. And I said, you don't like how the bit fits your mouth. So I jumped off, and I put his bit, the bridle up a notch, and I got back on him, and he tried it out again. And then all of a sudden, I felt this bomb start growing underneath me, and we started out underneath our front deck. Curly's loose behind me, and all of a sudden, he takes off, and he's at a dead run up the hill, and Curly's behind him. and I'm getting scared. He's going so fast. But what I realized was he was so happy I heard him. I finally listened to the. So that's what happened. So he began to change when I began to listen to him. And he's a lot better. He's not perfect, but even then we'd go out together and Clark would say, look how he's stepping out now. He's really moving out. So he was a different horse once I began to hear what he was saying. And this happened a few weeks later with a saddle blanket. I changed it out, and then boy, he was happy. So in our last class, we were led through an exercise of co-creating with whomever we had chosen. And some chose elephants and some dolphins, and I chose Cody. And during the exercise, we were given questions to ask. So Cody and I were communicating. And one was, what do you want to create with me? And you'll like this, Mike. Cody's answer was, peace and joy. And I thought, oh, I like that. And then another question was, what role will I play in our creation, Cody? And I could barely get the question out of my mouth, and he said, you are the student. And I thought, okay, fair enough. So the next ride I took with Cody was horrible. Absolutely horrible. He wouldn't move. He was stubborn. It was terrible. And I thought, oh man, we're back at square one. And that night, and going over the experience and ruminating about it, I found myself saying out loud, students have a voice too. And I said, I want to ride at a good speed. I want to go where I want to go. And I don't know what happened if he and I were really communicating that night. But the next day I took him out, and it was the best ride ever. He was happy. He was cooperative, like, let's go here, let's go there, and whatever speed I wanted to go. So obviously, he's a very interesting spirit in a horse body this time around. He's a great teacher, and slowly but surely I'm learning some of his lessons. And we do have a unique, ever-evolving relationship. So, in conclusion, in our last class, the teacher asked her cat several questions, and her cat had been a teacher throughout this whole series of classes. And the first was, if our governing authorities were humble enough to practice interspecies communication, how would that change their policy making? Here's the cat's answer. They would look to source for all their answers. If there was a conflict, they would look to source for solutions. If there was unhappiness, they would look to source to empower. If there was poverty and suffering, they would look to source for answers to bring community and cohesion. All the answers would be available to them in nature. In their nature, their true source of origin, not the ego of force and desire, but through the power of love of heart consciousness. Their policy making would be fluid. It would flow freely, effortlessly, because all people would be working together as community for one common good, to empower, to bring peace, to soothe and comfort, to listen to the less fortunate, and to empower those with influence to lead and serve through true power, heart, consciousness. Thank you.